this short introduction. Benoît Ferrari, many of you know him, is an ecotoxicologist who's worked with a lot of people, a lot of those present tonight, including me, and is known in the Lyon domain because in 2000 he got his PhD in Lorraine University in Metz in the east of France. Then he came twice in our region within the INRAE ecotoxicology INRAE. At the time it was called the CEMAGREF and then EOSTEA. So first as a research engineer after his PhD between 2000 and 2002, then as a research officer between 2008 2013. In the meantime, you know, he enjoys Switzerland because he worked as well for the Geneva University as an assistant lecturer. And during his stay at Geneva, his period, he developed the Ferrari Institute Ecotoxicology Lab. Then he's rich of several experiences, which made it possible to develop competence in ecotoxicology, and including the development of effect and exposure and effect ecotoxicology indicators for the assessment of the risk of chemical substances, but also for the quality of the contaminated ecosystems. Then we get to the end of then he went back to Switzerland, joined this Ecotox Centre, which is about to describe now. What is it? And first he ran for 6 years the soil and sediment ecotoxicology group based in Lausanne. I spent a couple of months there. I was very fortunate with these groups, and it was a very, very interesting experience. And since 2019, he's interim manager of the center, which includes the aquatic ecotoxicology group located in Dubendorf for 2 years now. And because of all the missions of the Ecotox Centre, which Benoît will describe during the presentation, and due to his function and missions, which he ensured, well, he has a very wide expertise in the transfer of tools and ecotoxicological tools to the end users, and he will enlighten us as to the strategies to be implemented to create or reinforce bridges between research and practice. This will be his presentation, and with no further ado, I'll give him the floor. Thank you, Stéphane. Thank you for having me here in your webinar. So I will try to tell you a story, narrative, and I will describe the Ecotox Centre. Let me share my screen. There we go. Is this okay for everybody?
J'étais bien en plein écran?
Ouais, là tu l'es plus. Là c'est bon.
Donc là on voit juste la slide de présentation.
Okay, this is the introduction slide.
Okay. Donc,
so,
comme je vous le disais, je vais essayer
as I was saying, I will give you an introduction of the Ecotox Centre. Can you see the mouse? Yes, we can see the mouse. Thank you. So this will be an attempt to describe the Ecotox Centre in Switzerland. I will not go into fundamental science. Will remain into the applied, in the applications. And throughout my presentation, I will tell you a story, the story of how we're going to use knowledge, scientific knowledge, and to transform and apply such knowledge to specific requests from stakeholders. First, the center itself. Because of the need for expertise in ecotoxicology in Switzerland, so the Ecotox Centre was founded in 2008 from a request from the Federal Council and the Swiss Parliament as a Swiss Ecole Ecotoxicology Center with a specific mandate within the mandate of the Federal Polytechnical School. So the reference point for the structure of the Ecotox Center is the report from the Federal Council on independent research in ecotoxicology in Switzerland, dating back to 2007. And documents are available, and you will see the state of ecotoxicology in Switzerland in 2007, and what was the mandate assigned to us to try to improve the ecotoxicological conditions in Switzerland. The Federal Council, in its report, defines missions for the center. So the missions first is to guarantee the transfer of know-how through vocational training. That's the education side, and which is more practice-oriented and information-driven, information provided to the participants. Develop methods for the detection and assessment of effects and environmental effects and risk of pollutants, and to provide scientific expertise, and then to ensure the function of consulting ecotoxicology council consulting for the cantonal federal authorities as well as private companies, but others may actually come and ask for information or consulting services. Today, you see the distribution. So 20% of the work is dedicated to education and information, about 10% for consulting, let's say, and a large part, most of it, 70%, is dedicated to research for development and validation of tools and their implementation directly to the environment, with a strong link with the authorities. From the organization chart, the Ecotox Centre is integrated within the Federal Polytechnical Schools, and it is housed by the AWAG, which is a technological institute which does water research, and the EPFL, which is the Federal Political Schools of School of Lausanne, and therefore they are in the in German-speaking and French-speaking Switzerland, which is quite specific in the center because we want to be as close as possible to the participants in Switzerland. So the center itself is administratively connected and meets in the AWAG, and the report to the AWAG, and the AWAG reports to the board of the federal schools. The management or the directorate comprises the director and one representative from each of the institutions in the domains. And this directorate is in charge of promoting collaboration with the AWAG, EPFL, and to ensure that there would be the management of the center is ensured by the director as well as by the various group leaders. To this, there is, in addition, there is an advisory board composed of several members from the Confederation, representatives from the federal offices, from the cantons, from the industry, and from the academic world. And this consulting group integrates the needs of the stakeholders and informs the Ecotox Centre of the needs or requirements, but it is also in charge of assessing or doing periodical assessment of the Ecotox Centre and issues a report and opinion on the actions and management. The center today, in 2020, the annual budget was 2.3 million Swiss francs for operation, and it comprises roughly 17 full-time equivalent employees, 50 permits, and multilingual, and therefore we can have exchanges in Switzerland, but beyond Switzerland as well. In its organization, the center covers 4 domains of expertise. First, all everything to do with particulates, soil is ecotoxicology, and sediment ecotoxicology for the aquatic water ecotoxicology, and then of course risk evaluation, which covers or overlaps with the three other domains. The 4 domains of expertise structure the center, and you can see in Dubendorf there is the administration and communication department, as well as the aquatic ecotoxicology group and the risk assessment group, and in the EPFL, ecotoxicology for soil and sediments, as I said, which is works on particulate, and it forms only one group between soil and sediments. This organization actually does not hinder the close collaboration within the Ecotox Centre, because everything is done for periodical exchanges, well, almost daily exchange between 2 centers. Of course, right now we use Zoom, but we can also do meetings among ourselves, and therefore we can have projects, collaborative projects between the various groups, and we can meet the request of the participants. In this organization, again, does not hinder collaboration within the Ecotox Centre, and does not hinder collaboration with outside. This is the context, the collaborative environment is within which we operate. This is the Ecotox Centre within the EPF domains, and in the core of the academic sphere. And the Ecotox Centre not only exchanges with the domain, but also with institutions from other domains, universities, university institutes in Switzerland, or agroscope, and as well as exchange with stakeholders, what we call the stakeholders. There will be including a lot with the federal offices, with the cantonal authorities, municipalities, as well as the industries and others. And therefore, we have privileged exchanges with the stakeholders, and we can understand the needs. Moreover, a strong collaboration with the various European countries, and I'll come back to this. So this environment, this collaborative space, makes it possible to overcome challenges, which I will discuss today, challenges to meet the needs of stakeholders, and to identify the future needs, and to propose applied solutions. I do insist on the very applied solutions. In order to understand the scope of activity or the domains of activity, and even if you've seen the 4 domains that of expertise, let me give you a couple of keywords which cover part of what we do. First, when it comes to development on elaboration of environmental quality standards, also the assessment of mixtures, mixture of substances which can be found in the environment, everything that has to do with biology, be it in terms of bioaccumulation, in vitro, in vivo test, lab online or in situ approaches, or even directly on site, in the field with using bioindicators, biomarkers as well, or development of biomarkers. You will see an example later on, and lots of work as well done on the effect-based thresholds, which are key for us to analyze and to print results from the various research works. As well, we also develop evaluation concepts, and we also deal with very practical aspects, such as sampling and sampling management. And of course, we do a lot of work on standardization. We are involved in ISO or EOCD And the networking, we network where we do this at the national scale in Switzerland or internationally. Then, of course, we are involved in the acquisition of knowledge, but not based on the biological mechanisms, but the acquisition of knowledge on the impact of substances such as pesticides or the assessment of quality of wastewater treatment plant effluents, or as you will see later on the impact of tire particles on the environment. Now, let me illustrate my talk with examples which will illustrate how we bridge between research and practice in Switzerland, and what forms through challenges, as I said early on, to really meet the needs of the stakeholders, but also in order to identify the future needs and propose applied solutions. One first example could be, which is the one that we often use when we present the Ecotox Centre, the development and derivation of environmental quality standard. We call them environmental quality criteria in Switzerland. The Ecotox Centre is strongly involved in the development of such standards, and we entertain a lot of discussion with the Swiss stakeholders, but also we have exchanges of data and information with several countries of the European Union concerning the ecotoxicological values, data coming from tests, but also the quality criteria which are drawn from it, environmental quality standards. So when it comes to applied research, we were able, through such exchange, we assessed the CRED, which is kind of data quality control before such data are used to derive environmental quality information. This is significantly used by the hazard risk assessment of Ecotox in order to control the quality of data and to provide value for the quality standards, which are robust and sound. When it comes to exchange and discussions on the basis of the CRED, we were able to establish environmental quality standard for concerning more than 90 substances, and to establish database for other substances. The exhaustive list of substances can be downloaded from the Ecotox website center. Data is available as an Excel file if you wish to know more about the substances and how the environmental quality standards have been derived for each substance, you may ask for the file just applied to the center. What can be said is that the results of these works, the result of these works is that in April 2020, and that's the pride of the center and the group that worked on it, that is the proposal established by the Ecotox Centre were included for 19 pesticides and 3 pharmaceutical products as digital requirements in the decree on water protection, which is the decree which gives a regulatory framework to the monitoring and assessment of the quality of rivers and lakes. So there is a true link between research and transfer into regulation drafting. But by establishing environmental quality standard for each of the substance, comes the question of knowing how such standards could be to characterize mixtures. Now, if we take a look in the Swiss decree on water production, in Switzerland, it is specified that quality of water must be such that substances which end up in waters following human activities do not hinder the reproduction, development, health of plants, animals, or sensitive plants, animals, or microorganisms. That's an extra abstract from this decree. Now, are the EQS sufficient? I mean, is the mixture approach useful? Well, we already had, all the cantons had a method that made it possible to establish the risk for the mixture due to the substance with the same mode of action. But in Bern and Zurich, they wanted to know if we could develop a method to assess all the substances. So if we take the concept of a forgiven substance, we calculate a QR, a risk, RQ, risk quotient. Based on that value, we can assess the evaluation of the river or stream on this basis. Now, when there's a mix of substances, well, regardless of the mode of action, we have to sum up all the RQs obtained to establish the risk of mix or RQ. Yet, quality criteria are always based, when they were developed on, they're always based on the more sensitive taxon, which is different from one substance to the next. Therefore, a simple addition of all the risk quotients could actually lead to a broad over-evaluation of the risk associated with the mix. Therefore, we developed an approach in which the EQS have been labeled to identify the most sensitive taxonomic groups for each substance. You can see here, if we take tebutrine, which is a weed killer, well, you see the NOAC based on the taxonomic group, plants, invertebrate, vertebrates, and we can see clearly plants are highly sensitive to the weed killer, yet. Therefore, we calculate the quality criteria, and then we label, we give a class, with a class, which will be class P for plants. Now, for other products, like the propamocarb, which is a fungicide, there the differences between taxonomic groups are not that obvious, and we do a classification as PIV, that is plants, invertebrates, and vertebrates. The global risk of a mix, of the mixture of all the substances which have been detected, can be expressed as a risk quotient for each taxonomic group. This is quite a busy equation, but it's quite simple. If you look here at the plant mix RQ mix, only compounds for this taxonomic group of plants, and only those compounds will be added. Then, once the RQ mix is in excess of 1 for the taxonomic group concerned, then in excess of 1, which means that there is a risk level for which the effect on the risk on the group could be assessed, and therefore the value of RQ mix would be the highest. Now, if we look at this example obtained on one of the rivers or streams, analyzed for the two cantons, which is Bern and Zurich. If we take the sum without looking at the taxonomic groups, but only the sum of all the risk quotient RQ mix of 2.8, and if we pay attention to the various taxonomic groups, such as for plants, you see we'll have only the RQ for plants, where we see the P sign, and we get so that's weaker than the RQ mix, and we can see already we've improved the risk approach compared to the invertebrate and vertebrate versus the invertebrate. You see this lower, and therefore this will make it possible to assess the quality of water, in which case we can, we see the scale of value that we've established. The approaches used for the two taxon were extended to a project at a wider scale, which was to examine a group on the NAVA network, National Monitoring of Water Quality, by the cantonal and federal authority, and SPECH means simply specific monitoring. That is, the measurement campaigns, limited in time, are used to study specific problems, and the measurements taken from some stations are analyzed more in details with more specific methods, such as the RIX mix approach or the other methods. So NAWA SPECH 2015 concerns, well, made it possible to go to see several streams in several cantons, in different cantons. We had a whole pack of actors and people involved in the projects. And it's interesting to be linked directly with the operationals and with the researchers to elaborate the concepts or others. And of course, this made it possible to try to use this method. Now, if we take risk assessment, if we take the example of data collected over a year for rivers, you see all the substances analyzed. On the other side, the risk scale based on the 5 colors, and throughout the year, you see the 12 months of the year, and we are able to calculate the RQ for each substance and give it a color. For example, regardless of the month, we can see differences as a function of the month and between substances. Sometimes they appear as risk or not. It will depend on what goes on during the year. Now, if we take into consideration the mixed risk or mixture risk, and therefore the various taxonomic groups, we see that there is a pressure on the organisms throughout the year with no recovery time throughout the year. So this, for example, for invertebrates, it's always, you see, there is always pressure, which was we checked that, by using an index, the spare index, which was poor, very poor, that the invertebrates were always under pressure. So clearly we can see, due to the fact that we are using this mixture approach, we were able to improve the interpretation of the reading. Same thing can be applied to several rivers or streams, and we can see for some of them we are mostly, for invertebrates, there is always stress all year round, whereas for the others it's more balanced. Well, we can compare the sites, and we can improve the diagnostic as to the quality of water. Then at the end, following the analysis of the results for all these campaigns, well, so what came out that the small rivers in the small streams in the region submitted to intensive agriculture are contaminated by sin. The analysis of risk caused by mixture shows the absence of recovery period, and it is recommended to combine the chemical biological approaches for risk analysis of mixture to obtain a better real vision of the situation. All these, works because behind that, following these approaches, all the campaigns, NAWA SPECH campaign were launched, for example, in 2017, which took into account the sediments. Now, this to lead to discussions directly with the Environmental Federal Office and the proposed project to propose a battery of bioassays to check the our biomonitoring. Now, if we take a look at the project project which is in progress right now. Well, the idea was to apply a range of biological tests, to propose this to the Environmental Federal Office, test it on a real scale on sites where we have control in terms of risk mixture, but also in terms of chemical analysis and of macroinvertebrate and others. And the idea was to test this proposal within the framework of this NAWA program on various sites with submitted to several stresses. So I wanted to assess water quality on the basis of trigger values based on effects, the EBTs, and this for bioassays. It is essential to better understand the results of the assays and to identify sites which could be problematic, as well as harmful substances or hazardous substances. So the one that could be targeted. And we will see with then, following the project, we'll come to the question of assessing the adequacy of this range of bioassays to propose appropriate bioassays for monitoring in the future. So now we stride in applied. We won't develop new bioassays. We'll use the bioassays which are present on the market, I would say available on the market, and then we'll use those which potentially could give us information on the quality or the risk. In order to improve the diagnostic. For example, the battery here covers several modes of action, be it in vitro or in vivo tests, as well as toxicity, for example, toxicity as a whole. And the idea, of course, here, no test was included concerning for neurotoxicity. So that's we might see genotoxicity. Well, we didn't have anything on the market. We didn't have tests assessed that could make it possible to do it. So we compare results versus the thresholds to assess the ecotoxicological risk. The assessment of quality assessment based on effects should make it possible to establish a hierarchy of sites based on the ecotoxicology to identify the presence of harmful or hazardous compounds, even though they are not on the list of priority substances, and could make it possible to do away with costly chemical analysis in sites which have little ecological risk. So that's the added value for the pre-diagnostics diagnosis. Now, just to give you an example for estrogenicity for the project. So we work in collaboration with other countries. 16 rivers in Europe have been analyzed, and if we are to compare the results of the 16 rivers, we can see that with this threshold, we can establish a discrimination between those which have no problem and those which could be a problem. These approaches show a very promising screening function and specific detection of combined effects of estrogen mixtures. And we can extend this to several modes of action. Now, when it comes to research, well, when it comes to research, we can say that beyond the approaches with action tests, mode action tests, which are available, commercially available, we provide, the Ecotox also provide other solutions, plan the future needs in terms of bioanalytics to look for the cause of the effects by trying to identify the cause of the effects, for example, with the effect-directed analysis, chromatography, by doing fractioning of the samples, we can fraction the samples and see what type of substance could be identified. So we work on the development of a chromatography type approach coupled with the in vitro bioassays. These are the in vitro bioassays, which are extracts of samples that we dilute, and we obtain several answers, and we start from this to establish the result. And there, the idea is to move on to something more complex and to fraction the sample. From this, we place the sample. The sample will make it will be fractioned, and we spray the organism used for the bioassay. The strip will appear if it works, and this will tell us that it corresponds to a group of substances which cause such effects. And afterwards, we'll recover this, do an analysis, non-targeted analysis, and see if which type of substance could cause such assay, could trigger other complementary approaches, the biomarker approaches. We also work on molecular biomarkers on trials with the development of chips that will be used directly to see if we observe a change in trials and elaborate the diagnostic. So I'll spare you the details of everything we do, but that shows you that part of this is highly applied, and other part where we try to move on to promote, provide tools in the future that will be very important to be integrated to improve the situation. Now, another story and another context I would like to say, it is that of sediments. A long story in the Ecotox Centre, but most interesting because it led to the publication of a guide that makes it possible to assess, well, giving the recipes to assess the quality of sediments. Sediments, as you know, is a very specific major compartment of aquatic ecosystems, and it does appear in the Swiss Decree for Water Protection, where as such in other documents or regulatory texts in Switzerland. It is interesting to be able to take it into consideration. Yet, this, although national programs, monitoring programs such as NAWA, I mentioned earlier on, do exist for water, it does not exist yet for sediments, even though there is data available today from cantons, and this available data shows us that sometimes contamination of sediments is really present in Switzerland. In 2010, we did a questionnaire which was prepared with targeted questions and using the discussion group at the national and international scale, which we applied the quality of assessment. And this questionnaire gave us an overview of activities for the assessment of sediments in the various cantons which responded to the questionnaire. So it's a true participative approach. There we go towards canton. We go to cantons, we ask them to know what they do, what they're doing, and then afterwards we assess the answers of the questionnaires. We move on and we propose something. Now, if I show you the results of the questionnaire rapidly, well, you can see here, what should be borne in mind is that most of the cantons interviewed did only chemistry, but did insist, well, but what was mentioned in the questionnaire, there was no harmonization concerning the sampling and no recommendation of quality criteria based on ecotoxicological effects or even to compare the answers obtained. For ecotoxicology, well, it's almost anecdotal at the time and very little concerning ecology. Therefore, no recommendation on the ecotoxicology, and we can see that the bioindication was little or not used for the quality of sediments, well, or the utilization of microinvertebrates, for example. This questionnaire made it possible to establish priorities of needs and interests of cantons cantons for them. For the cantons, we needed a harmonize the sampling method and the pretreatment method for the samples, and then we needed to have a quality criteria from which we thought about the development of a concept to help cantons in assessing the quality of the sediments. And in 2015, with the AIRWAG and the Federal Office for the Environment, we launched a sediment module to assessment of sediment. In 2021, you will see the results. So this concept was, on the one hand, well, to have a first phase which paid attention to the needs directly of what the cantons needed. It was an assessment system of the chemical set by harmonizing sampling and by developing quality criteria. But we thought in longer term with phase 2, phase 3, phase 2 with, of course, the bioassays and the benthic communities, and phase 3, which is more the integration of hydrodynamics of system to better assess the risk of the sediments and see how they move in the rivers. We're not there yet, but for the time being, we just finished phase 1, which took place mainly in our work package. So we issue methodological recommendation for the sampling and pretreatment of sediment, and recommendation for ecotoxicological quality criteria and the class criteria, the colors I showed you early on, in line with the graded modular system used in Switzerland, which is the applied to Switzerland. So now for the first work package, we did review of the methodology of sampling. We acquired data concerning the viability of the methods used, and we did a synthesis and revision of the method that we proposed in a guide. And furthermore, we developed quality criteria trying to follow the approach carried out for water. Now, just to show you the involvement of the stakeholders, the cantons, that is during the we organized the method that we would have liked to propose, where we invited the cantons to compare the method they used in terms of qualitatively and semi-qualitative. So we invited them to come on site in different locations. 8 cantons responded to our call, so we went to various sites, about 10 sites, which had different pollution problems and source, different substrates as well, when we look at this, but also the different tools are used by the cantons. And we compared all this to a first aspect of the method. So I'll spare you the results, but simply to show you the involvement of the cantons. And in the second step, once we had processed the result, we came up with a new version of the method proposed to harmonize the sampling at the Swiss scale. We went to one site and asked 8 operators from various cantons to come and test the method, to test the viability of the method, and tell us if this method could be applied without too much variability by the various operators in the various cantons. When it comes to the second work package, so we want to select substances to be targeted and to develop quality criteria. Of course, considering the number of substances that exist in the world and which could be found in the sediments, well, we are not going to develop criteria for all of them, but we made a selection of substances for which we considered there was a high probability of finding them in the sediments. Again, we had a very pragmatic approach from a list of candidate substances, about 1,000. First screening, taking into account, the criterion such as monitored by canton, contaminated sites, the priority substances, DC, the PPV authorized and non-authorized, all lists which gave us to a first sorting by integrating exhibition data and the physicochemical properties. So we had a first screening, dropping the number of substances to 237, then a categorization, a high category and a hierarchy of substances. This will, you can see how we did this in the publication, which was issued. All this to give us about 20 substances to develop the quality criteria. Then this approach was validated by a group of international expert groups, the national scale, including representatives from the cantons, from the federal offices, from the university academic research group, and also expert groups. And then we developed for this criteria, we developed the criteria. Now, the technical guide today is being finalized. We're in Switzerland, so it takes slightly longer because it has to be translated into the official languages of the country. The publication date is end of 2021. You will find it in English, in French, in German. So it can be used at least, it could be used outside of Switzerland. Now, quickly to give you an indication of what may be found in this guide. Well, it's also the metrics for the design of a study. I will spare you the details, but simply to orient it based on the studies, to recommend how we're going to sample. We can sample, and are we authorized to compare this to the various class or quality criteria. So this is a very helpful support to design the sampling that will be done. So we also propose a step-based approach. For example, we had level 1 of the step. Now we deal with chemistry and quality criteria only. And based on the answers to level 1, we move on to level 2, which involves the various tools such as bioassess and bioindication. Now for level 1 chemistry, you see an example here, simply that we find the calculation of quotient RQ which will give us a risk quotient and gives a color to the sediment and give us an indication as to the quality of such sediment. Again, we give a recipe for the application of such quality criteria because they have been established and derived for sediments with a total organic carbon of 1%. As a function of the site and what we measure on site, there is a normalization to be planned for, to be scheduled. Of course, in parallel, we're not going to wait for the development of phase 2, and therefore we have projects that make it possible to keep developing or to test different approaches, different bioassays, to see which one will be best suited. For example, here, we did a study on the use of ostracode tests to get an idea of the quality of sediments in the Léman Geneva Lake. We used bioassays to acquire data for substances to improve the data to derive quality criteria. We've also integrated the NAWASH PEDS 2017. We integrate bioassays a batch of bioassays for sediments, which will be tested and work on the toxicity thresholds of the various bioassays for a better interpretation of the results. And in fact, this project is integrated within the NAWA pilot project to try to establish a battery of bioassays for the aquatic environment. And we also do innovative development for bioeducation. We do work on the use of DNA code barcodes to improve some bioindicators which have been forgotten for illegal cases, which are very difficult to identify them. So you need a certain expertise, to go to these species. So we worked on the development of a DNA approach, which is just about to be validated at a larger scale in Switzerland. And we also preparing a standardization to use this method. Quickly, a couple of words about consulting, just to tell you that there have been several stories about water and sediments, for example. Well, to try to include, at least to do a transfer of this knowledge to these tools or instruments for the operationals. Well, if we talk about consulting, a while ago we were approached by the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and which represented the various industrialists who produce car tires, and we were asked if things were missing in the research to assess the possible impact of tire particulates. Based on this, we were able to generate, or at least to have the opportunity to propose projects that make it possible to respond to this lack of information on the possible impact of tire particles on the environment. I didn't talk about the soil. I could talk about what we do in the Ecotox Centre, simply to tell you that we are running a large project in direct link with the authorities, also in direct link with a large action plan dealing with the reduction of the risk and the sustainable utilization of phytosanitary products. And therefore, we've been asked to design an approach to assess the quality of soils, farming soil, agricultural soil, basically, using the same recipe as for sediment. That is, on the one hand, to elaboration of quality criteria of the soil, which had been forgotten in Europe. It is put back, and also the elaboration of a toolbox of bioindicators that makes it possible to give information on the quality of the soil. We're using, again, a multi-collaboration approach. And therefore, after a certain number of years, we should have this concept should be usable, and will provide information on the biomonitoring or on the quality of soils following the reduction of the utilization of pesticides. Quick word about the vocational training we do. Soon, this is what we do for those who would like to know more about ecotoxicology. First, a biomarker class. So unless you talk German, but anyway, so we'll see. And soon there will be introduction to ecotoxicology. You can register, not forgetting the information or major part which is developed here in the Ecotox Centre. You can download all the reports we use, where you can navigate on the web page to get information as cards, or, you know, one last one was the impact of cigarette butts. You know, we took stock of the situation, but also on all the publications, scientific and applied publications, and not forgetting the Centre Ecotox News, which is our newsletter twice a year, which takes stock of the projects in progress and what goes on around us on ecotoxicology, and it is summarized so that it is easy to read. And you see a short video, I hope, on a short video on your screen. We've asked people to have some people to come and film how we do bioassays, and this could help labs how to read the protocols, but also to see concretely how it works. And we hope that will increase the number of videos that you can already see online on the site. I'd like to conclude simply with, to summarize everything I said. I hope I wasn't too long. Well, simply, I want to say challenges we have at the Ecotox group, like in most labs which do applied operational ecotoxicology, is to meet the needs of the stakeholders while identifying the future needs and proposing applied solutions within a regulatory context with societal stakes or challenges. We need to find a balance, but clearly we have to listen to the need. We have to listen to the needs, and also we have to be able to integrate the knowledge produced by science, such as they are, and to transform all this so that it is used as simply as possible, again, in this regulatory context and societal context. Let me close with just to say that challenges can be quite complicated sometimes. You know, we worked on this with Stéphane a while ago with other colleagues to try to assess the quality of sediments in the Geneva Lake, and to propose, well, to use tools, new tools, to give a perspective to the tools. And I hope that we'll be able to continue on with this project, and possibly other among yourselves may join us. And this time I'm really finished, and I would like to thank you for your attention, and thank you to the team of the Ecotox Centre for lending me the slides which I've assembled. It's a teamwork. I'd like to insist on this point, the involvement of all my colleagues. Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci, Benoît.
Thank you, Benoît.
Bon, on voit, c'est bien, on voit
So, well,
parce que tu as un peu dépassé ton temps quand même.
you're not totally Swiss because you've still gone slightly over time, or you're slightly over time. Anyway, a couple of questions which cropped up in the chat. One from Bernard Clément and Marina Coquery on the availability of reports and articles, but you answered that in your presentation. Everything is available on your website. Yes, absolutely. You can navigate. There is nothing's confidential, so everything's published. Well, except what is highly confidential, of course. But otherwise, everything is published and downloadable from our site, reports and publications, and you know, vulgarization articles. And of course, you may run through the various Ecotox newsletters, which you can download from the site as well. And for the environmental quality standards, the EQS, we just give the Excel file, which can be downloaded directly. But for each of the substance, if you need the original dossier, then you have to send an email, info-centre Ecotox, to ask to have access to this dossier. Well, this links up with another question from Bernard, which concerns the EQS. So what are the quality requirements? How Switzerland is vis-à-vis the other European countries? And do you inspire yourself on European EQS? Well, we do dialogue. There is an exchange which is very strong because we are, well, we take part in the working group of chemical products of the DC with Europe. We're part of the group, and we are also take part in multilateral meetings with countries, so informal meetings to exchange on the methods and to develop methods and to follow up on the DC approaches for the development of quality criteria. But as I mentioned in the presentation, well, we want to develop as well. That was development done in collaboration with the countries. Well, the CRED to try to have a quality control in a way of the data used for the development of the EQS. Now, when it comes to the positioning, well, some substances, of course, are taken from DC, but there are other substances which are very specific and with specific needs, of course, in Switzerland. This is why we have a list of substances which has been developed in this context. Another question from Pierre-François Stob. In the meantime, please, click your hands. And now, a question from Pierre-François. Did you establish correlation between bioassays on the one hand and other biodiversity index in your work to see if it matched? If it matches between bioassays and between bioassays and community index. Well, I would say that it is a work in progress. Yes, when it comes to past projects, I don't have any results to show you now, but in our publications, it appears, if I'm not mistaken. Well, in this Navas-Spitz approach, for example, we compared some bioassays with indicators, be they bioindicators or even in situ approaches. So this work is a work in progress, I could say. And for the time being, we capitalize on what is important, that is basically to be able to use what exists, existing bioassays, as I've shown you early on. And in the future project that is coming, one of the results, expected result, is comparison with the macroinvertebrate indexes used on the same sites of Navas-Spitz, all at the same time. In addition, not just for water, but also for sediments. Developed, by us. It's difficult to give you precise answers because there are a lot of documents on this. I give the floor to Jean-Philippe Bedel. Hello, thank you for your presentation. I have a question concerning you have your opinion when we do mixtures, when you work out the risk quotients, there is a point which is we are quality of hazard or bioassays. How can we take into account the accessibility or availability of the molecule and the mix of molecule in the complex matrices of sediments? Well, we deal with it the best we can, not for the models which are used. However, behind the utilization of bioassays or others, we work directly on these matrices. or in terms of bioaccumulation in organisms, well, we respond to this, but of course, part is done in the lab. We explore, you know, it's one of my hobbies, which I try to continue to work on the in situ test to answer that. And then after that, the utilization of passive sampling, which may give an idea of this bioavailability of the substances. But I would like to say it's not just one tool to respond, it's an association of tools and the expertise we put behind this to interpret the results. So a lot of work to be done, not just scientific work, but also, you know, to churn things so that, you know, practitioners should be selected by the tools and ranges of tools by preparing the work for them, you know, to the interpretation of results. This is the, well, at least by talking with those, well, with the authorities and the operationals who will use this, will ask companies which have these the tools. Well, it is to be able to facilitate the interpretation of results and show them the added value. So clearly, there is a major communication effort is to be made there. Thank you. I have a question to take advantage, since we don't have too many requests, to talk about less interesting, but the financial aspect. We can see that in what you're presenting, well, there are integrators, and by integrating the way it is they're sampled and analyzed, it takes time. You know, the sediment module started quite more 5 years ago, and we've only completed phase 1. So, of course, it's always a problem for us to say, okay, now with the functioning of research, which works only on short-term project, how can we, in the academics, to contribute to this? Now, how are you financed when you got requests like that long-term? Is it with recurrent credits because they are the conditions, or from the start, is there an assessment of the time spent and the stakeholders finance you accordingly? Well, we are fortunate enough to get part of the money. Well, a part of the money we get, it can be spent on risky projects, but also the fact that we're very close to the authorities, very close to the practitioners or the operationals. Well, it works very well in Switzerland. Well, they come easily to see us and finance easily studies as soon as this applied side. Well, the thing that once they know that they can use it. So we got two financing, external financing, and our own financing. So in pilot projects, for example, here we have pilot projects which make it possible to get data, to get proofs, evidence that it's worth doing. Then afterwards, of course, everything we bring is debated in groups, in work groups, directly in line with the authorities to know if it is worthy of or not to develop it. So I would like to say that we are fortunate in that in Switzerland we can do it. So after that, for you on the other side, we see our research evolves, of course, that it becomes more and more difficult to find funds. And I don't know what advice I could give you, but I would say that to ask your authorities to provide money, to provide funds to do this type of pilot projects, and that will make it possible to possibly to better sell the future projects. Yeah, I see Jean-Philippe has an interesting reaction there to the idea of asking for budgets. Yeah, you know, lol. Yeah, so it's very hard, but this is where we stand now. But I think the networking, and once, you know, if funds are available, networking is essential, you know, sharing as well, you know, sharing of some platforms, you know, can reduce costs, you know, analysis platform that is. True networking makes it possible to pool budgets to initiate things. Well, it's more the question of cost. It's a question of time scale. That's difficult to implement when, you know, when we want to do large scale of validation. We know it takes long. We know with the example of multi-gamma with the colleagues from Ecotox, several theses were, you know, have been launched, but they worked hard on that, but we can't always do it, but we can less and less do it. So that was just a short comment like that. A question from David, because David Lee. David.
Oui, je veux.
David
Merci
Vignetti.
beaucoup,
Hello.
Stéphane.
Hello.
Bonjour à tout le monde. Ciao, Benoît.
Hello.
Merci bien pour tout cette
Thank you for this
overview des activités du centre
overview of
suisse
the
d'Ecotox.
activities of
Très
your
intéressant.
center. Ecotox Centre
Mais bon,
was interesting,
tu
but
connais mes activités,
you know
tu sais
my
que je m'intéresse
activities, you know
surtout aux
that
éléments de
pay
traces
attention
métalliques.
to the
Donc, je me
transmetallic
posais la
elements.
question,
So I'd like
comment en
to
Suisse
know
les
how in
cantons,
Switzerland
par rapport aux éléments de traces,
when
essaient
it
de
comes to
prendre en
trace
compte
elements,
la
how do you
variabilité des
take into
concentrations
account the
des
variability of
différents mondes.
concentration of
Surtout qu'en
in the
Suisse, la
background.
géologie,
Especially in
c'est très
Switzerland,
varié.
the geology is
Est-ce que vous
varied.
avez été
Now, how
sollicité
do
pour ça
you were you
comment
asked
ça
to
s'est
deal on
passé?
that with that? Does it work? No, we were not asked, but Kerman Kazadok, whom you know, worked on the topic on that topic to bring out that the strict application of some environmental quality standard, for example, as a threshold, you know, used to define if we have an impact, there is an impact on oil. Well, could be not usable in Switzerland. So, so we turned to approaches which are used classically in Europe. We didn't go any further. It is still a pending issue. Still work to be done there. In the guide, which will be posed, we do mention the fact that at a certain level, you have to just accept the background because you don't need to take a threshold as a function of the location where you are and to apply such or such method.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. I see no other questions in the chat. No hand. So.
Juliette.
Oui, bonjour.
Juliette. Benoît, hello again. Thank you for your presentation. Most interesting presentation. Now, back to the taxon-based approach or groups of taxon. What difference or similarity do you establish with the biotic index approach of this year and and your approach? Well, what difference? Well, that's a tricky question here. You cornered me here. Yeah. Well, anyway, well, the risk assessment group of the Ecotox group worked on this, and well, for each of the groups, the data used to establish the dossier and to derive the environmental quality standards are taken into account. So it's not directly linked with with what you're saying, but it is simply that we redistribute, rearrange the sensitivity as a function of the groups. It's an approach. It's very pragmatic approach.
Et du coup, est-ce que
Now,
la donnée est moins agrégée?
is data less aggregated and more sensitive?
La donnée est moins. Je pourrais pas te dire là.
I can't say. I can't say. Well, you know, you go too much into detail. It's not my field of expertise. But if you want to know more, you can talk directly with Marion Goodowns, who's developed that. And these approaches are quite robust to show, well, at least where we are in approaches which function well when we look for bioindicator indices and or index and see what this mixture approach shows that, and what we shows in terms of stress or pressure. So we want to show is there real pressure throughout the year, to show that you know, organisms don't have time to recover, and in this case it works anyway.
Ok, merci.
Thank you.
Et sinon, moi, je suggère de prendre l'argent.
Well, I suggest that take money from Switzerland to do the. We should take money from Switzerland to do the studies in France. Well, you can always try.
Elle est presque réussie.
Non, il en a amené.
Parfait. Bon, bah là, a priori, il n'y a plus de main levée.
So now we're done.
Alors, je tiens à dire simplement que mon domaine
Now, just for the domain of expertise more on the sediments, well, all the approaches that we are presenting, of course, I invite you, if you want to know more, I invite you to contact my colleagues directly. They'll be very pleased to help you, to answer your questions. I'm just the,
je ne joue que le rôle de.
I'm only the messenger. I'm only the messenger, says he.
Jean-Philippe qui veut savoir comment on prend.
Ouais, j'ai juste une petite dernière question, c'est plus
One last question, it's more, do you have certain practice in your Berkelian or German style programs, or to welcome PhD students or exchange researchers? Well, the AWAC and TFLs do that, yeah, EPFL do that. We directly, we could host, of course, a project, but I know that it is done. Yes, I know it is done. You know, with the thematic are very complementary, so it might be worth one day to take time and to, well, you know, to see what can be done together, you know, with the H2O'Lyon, which is good in terms of visibility and concentration of science. So this could help, of course, there. Well, yeah. Well, what I understood is because we discussed it together that when in your missions you don't have the we do not finance or co-finance thesis or PhD. No. That's why I was reorienting you to the academic world, the AWAG or the EPFL, and the universities and the specialized schools, which is the Swiss academic domain, and it works. But what we can do for some thematics, we can host students, be they in master or PhD students. That's fine, but we do not support this, but only as co-directors. But we don't do even in fundamental research. It's not our job. It's not our mission. It's not our mission. It's not designed for that.